The envelope slid across the tablecloth like it weighed nothing, but the sound it made, that soft paper whisper, cut through every laugh, every clinking glass, every happy graduation toast happening at the tables around us. Mom's manicured fingers pushed it toward me like she was serving dessert. Her smile stretched wide enough to crack her fresh Botox, and Madison already had her phone up, recording every second. "This is from all of us, sweetie," Mom's voice carried. "It was meant to, for your graduation." The cream-colored envelope was heavy in my hands. Expensive paper, the kind that means business. After 27 years of being Erin Mosley, the family disappointment, I should have recognized a setup when it came in nice stationery with my graduation dinner on the side. "I'm Erin. I'm 27, and I finished my MBA 2 hours ago. The same MBA my parents said was a waste of time because I should have gone to law school like Madison." The letter inside wasn't a card. It was 3 pages of legal documentation, and the heading made my heart stop, not from hurt, but from the sheer absurdity of it. Notice of familial disownment, like something out of a Victorian novel, except typed in Times New Roman and notarized by Madison's law firm. Dad cleared his throat, that same theatrical sound he makes before his country club speeches, the ones where he explains why something terrible is actually an act of love. The restaurant was full of other graduation celebrations, families hugging, toasting, being normal, while mine documented my exile for social media. I've always been the problem child, not because I did drugs or failed school or dated the wrong people. No, my crime was worse in the Mosley family universe. I refused to be molded. Madison glided through law school, married a senator's son, bought a house with pillars like a miniature White House. I had the audacity to study business and talk about startups. Dad owns a manufacturing company that's been hemorrhaging money for 5 years. But somehow, my dreams of entrepreneurship were the unrealistic ones. The joke was so rich I almost laughed right there, but I kept reading instead. The letter detailed everything: removal from the will, cancellation of my health insurance effective immediately, removal from the family trust, even a formal request to change my last name. They'd thought of everything, these people who gave me life and were now serving me papers to prove I was dead to them. The reason, buried in paragraph 2, was beautiful in its pettiness: failure to contribute to the family legacy and pursuit of unrealistic endeavors despite repeated guidance. Translation: I wouldn't work for free at Dad's failing company or marry Todd, the boring pharmaceutical representative Mom kept inviting to dinner. Madison zoomed her camera closer, probably hoping for tears. She'd been planning this, I realized. I recognized her big scoop face from when she'd read my diary to the entire family at Thanksgiving 15 years ago. Some people never grow out of their mean girl phase. They just get law degrees and call it advocacy. Dad was warming up now, his voice carrying across the dining room as he explained to me, and apparently everyone within earshot, about tough love and building character. Mom nodded along, though her frozen forehead couldn't quite sell the concern she was attempting. Other diners were staring now, some with horror, others with that uncomfortable fascination people get when witnessing a car crash in slow motion. The funny thing about being disowned publicly is that it clarifies everything instantly. Every birthday they forgot, every achievement they diminished, every backhanded compliment wrapped in concern. It all made sense now. I wasn't their daughter, I was their project. And projects that don't turn out as planned get scrapped. The waiter approached with our entrees, took one look at the scene, and reversed course like he'd stumbled into a crime scene. Smart man. Dad's speech reached its crescendo, something about eagles pushing their young from nests, which might have been inspiring if eagles actually did that, and if he hadn't been reading from note cards. Madison was live streaming now. I noticed her phone angled to catch my face while keeping hers in frame. Always the lawyer, documenting everything. The family group chat was probably blowing up with real-time commentary from aunts and uncles who'd been warned this was happening. They'd planned this for months. Mom's insistence on this specific restaurant. Madison flying in from Boston despite claiming to be swamped with cases. Dad's rehearsed metaphors that he definitely practiced in his bathroom mirror. The letter's second page was even better, listing my failures in bullet points like a performance review from hell. Refused reasonable employment offers. Translation: wouldn't be Dad's unpaid secretary. Demonstrated pattern of defiance. Translation: got my MBA instead of marrying Todd, failed to maintain family standards, translation, drove a Honda instead of a Mercedes. Madison had definitely written this. She loved bullet points almost as much as she loved humiliating me. Her phone stayed steady, waiting for the breakdown, the tears, the begging. She'd probably already picked out the filter for posting this later. Mom finally spoke up. Her voice pitched perfectly between concern and condescension. She talked about how this was really for my own good, how struggling would build character, how they'd always love me but couldn't enable me anymore. Enable what? Exactly? My education, which I paid for myself, my apartment, which I'd rented since college, the health insurance I only used for annual checkups. The irony was delicious, considering Madison lived in a house Dad bought and worked at a firm where Mom's connections got her hired, but I was the one being enabled. The other diners weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. A woman at the next table had her hand over her mouth, looking between us like she was watching a soap opera. Her husband shook his head slowly, the universal sign for, "That ain't right." A table of recent graduates across the room had gone silent, probably thanking their lucky stars their families were normal. Even our waiter was hovering by the kitchen door, no doubt updating the staff on the drama at table 12. I did something then that I could tell wasn't in their script. I smiled. Not a sad smile or a sarcastic smile, but a genuine, relieved smile. Then I said, "Thank you." Just that. Thank you. Mom's Botox finally met its match as she attempted to look shocked. Dad's cards scattered as he fumbled for what came next. Madison's camera shook slightly, the first crack in her composure. "Thank you for the clarity," I told them. "Thank you for putting it in writing. Thank you for making it official." I stood up, folded the letter carefully, evidence is always useful, and picked up my purse. Madison found her voice first, shrieking that I couldn't just leave, that this was a conversation, that I was being dramatic. The irony of calling me dramatic while live-streaming my disownment in a crowded restaurant was apparently lost on her. Mom reached for my wrist, but I stepped back smoothly. 3 pages of legal disownment makes the boundaries pretty clear. Dad just sat there, looking confused that his eagle metaphor hadn't resulted in me tearfully promising to change. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving them with the check and an audience. Behind me, I heard the murmur of shocked strangers and Madison's voice, shrill now, no longer performing, but genuinely flustered that her viral moment hadn't gone as planned. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. The family group chat was exploding, but I didn't look. My roommate Sarah had sent a single text, "How bad was dinner?" I texted back, "Got disowned officially, with paperwork." Her response came instantly, "Your family makes reality TV look boring. Wine is ready." The secret I'd kept for 3 years felt lighter now that I had no family to hide it from. My startup, tucked away under registrations that said E. Montgomery Enterprises, had been my real baby while my family thought I was playing around with little business ideas. The name came from my grandmother's maiden name, Eleanor Montgomery, the only Mosley who ever believed in me. She died 4 years ago, but not before pulling me aside at her last Christmas and whispering that the family money wasn't worth the family chains. She'd also mentioned something about her will that made Mom nervous, but lawyers said nothing could be done about ironclad provisions written by a woman who'd outlived 2 husbands and knew her way around legal documents. Sarah poured wine while I told her everything, her reactions ranging from gasps to laughter to offers to slash their tires, which I declined but appreciated. She'd been there through all of it. Every time Mom called my dreams cute. Every time Dad offered me receptionist work like he was doing me a favor. Every time Madison posted her perfect life on Instagram with captions about being blessed with success. Sarah knew about the startup too, had watched me code until 4 a.m., attended every failed pitch, celebrated every small victory. She was the sister I chose, worth a dozen Madisons. My phone rang, and the caller ID made me smile. My business partner, Arthur Chen, former IBM executive who'd retired early and decided to mentor hungry entrepreneurs instead of playing golf. He had urgent news, he said, the kind that required champagne, not wine. We'd been selected as preferred vendors for a major software contract, the kind that could transform us from startup to legitimate company. The client was being cagey about their identity, But they needed our exact solution for supply chain management. Arthur was practically giggling, which from a 60-year-old man who'd seen everything in tech was either concerning or amazing. The twist that made me laugh until Sarah thought I'd lost it? The anonymous client desperately seeking our software was in manufacturing, specifically in the exact industry where Dad's company was drowning. They'd reach out to us soon, Arthur said. Probably within days. They needed us more than we needed them, a position I'd dreamed about but never expected. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor about timing. But the revelation that really stopped me cold came from an unexpected source. My mom's former best friend, Linda, who'd been cut off years ago for questioning family decisions. She DM'd me on Instagram with receipts I never knew existed, screenshots from 5 years ago, emails between my parents about sabotaging my Stanford Business School application. They'd called the admissions office claiming I had mental health issues that would make me unsuitable for the program. Only a last-minute letter from my undergraduate advisor had saved my acceptance. They'd been trying to clip my wings long before tonight's public execution. Linda had more evidence. Attempts to get me fired from my internship by calling my boss with concerns. Attempts to access my bank accounts for monitoring. Even a private investigator report they'd commissioned to find dirt on my business activities. The joke was on them. The investigator found nothing because I'd been careful, keeping everything under Montgomery Enterprises, paying my taxes, building legitimately. My family had spent more money trying to stop me than they'd ever spent supporting me. The plan formed itself like code writing itself, elegant, efficient, and inevitable. Dad's company, Mosley Manufacturing, was bleeding clients because their supply chain system belonged in a museum. They'd refused to modernize for 20 years, and now they were scrambling. Arthur confirmed what I suspected. They were our anonymous client, desperate enough to pay premium prices for immediate implementation. They didn't know Montgomery Enterprises was mine. The paperwork was clean, the website professional but vague, and my name appeared nowhere. Arthur found the whole thing hilarious, calling it corporate karma and offering to be my frontman for meetings. Madison, meanwhile, was having her own crisis. Her livestream of my disownment had backfired spectacularly. Someone from the State Bar Association had commented that recording someone without consent in a two-party consent state was problematic, especially for a practicing lawyer. Her firm's senior partners weren't happy about the viral video featuring their letterhead on disownment papers. She deleted it, but the internet is forever, and screenshots were spreading faster than she could issue takedown notices. She'd texted me 15 times, alternating between threats and negotiations, each message more desperate than the last. I incorporated everything properly, making sure Montgomery Enterprises was bulletproof legally. My lawyer, not Madison, obviously, but a shark who'd graduated from Harvard when Madison was still in diapers, reviewed everything twice. We were positioned perfectly, a legitimate company with a revolutionary product, about to save a failing manufacturer who happened to share my former last name. The contract terms Arthur negotiated were beautiful: upfront payment, monthly maintenance fees, and a penalty clause if they tried to break the agreement early. It would either save Dad's company or bankrupt it faster, depending on how well they implemented our solution. Mom tried calling from different numbers, leaving voicemails that ranged from furious to pleading. Did I know what I'd done to the family's reputation? How could I walk out like that? Didn't I care that Madison's wedding, her second one, to another lawyer who looked like he was born in a suit, might be affected by the scandal? The woman who'd orchestrated my public humiliation was concerned about reputation. The jokes wrote themselves. She'd even contacted my old college friends, trying to get them to influence me. They screenshot her messages and sent them to me with laughing emojis. Team Aaron was stronger than she'd expected. The meeting was set for next week. Mosley Manufacturing's board would meet Montgomery Enterprises to sign the contract that could save them. Arthur would be there as my representative, wearing his best suit and his poker face. I'd be in the building too, in a conference room 1 floor up, watching everything through the video call Arthur would secretly have running on his tablet. Dad would shake hands with the man representing his daughter, begging for the help he'd sworn I could never provide, paying premium prices for the unrealistic endeavors he'd mocked. Sarah helped me prepare everything. creating a presentation that was technically perfect but included subtle nods only my family would recognize, the Montgomery name prominently displayed, my grandmother's favorite quote about independence in the footer, even the color scheme from my rejected business proposal from 3 years ago. When I tried to help Dad modernize, he'd laughed at that proposal, called it amateur hour, suggested I focus on finding a husband instead. Now he'd be signing a contract based on those same ideas, just packaged differently and priced at market value instead of offered for free. Madison's texts grew more frantic as her wedding approached. The scandal was ruining everything, she claimed. Her future in-laws were concerned about family dynamics. The irony of her wedding being affected by family drama she'd created and broadcast was poetry. She'd wanted viral content. She'd gotten it. The internet had opinions about a lawyer who'd film her sister's humiliation for entertainment, and those opinions weren't wedding gift registries. Even Todd, the pharmaceutical rep, had reached out, saying he was glad I hadn't ended up stuck with him, that he'd only gone along with my mom's matchmaking for the free dinners. At least someone got something good from those awkward setups. The morning of the meeting, Arthur called me with barely contained glee. "Your father's been singing E. Montgomery's praises all week," he said. "Called us the future of manufacturing technology. His board is desperate. They've already lost 3 major clients this month." I sat in my office. Yes, I had an actual office now, not the coffee shop corner I'd started in, watching Arthur adjust his tie on video call. He looked like every corporate savior Dad had ever hired, silver-haired and distinguished. The kind of man who belonged in boardrooms and knew it. The perfect front man for the perfect revenge that wasn't even revenge, just business. At 10 o'clock a.m., Arthur walked into the Mosley Manufacturing Conference Room. I watched through his tablet camera as Dad shook his hand with both of his. That desperate two-handed grip men use when they really need something. Mom sat in the corner, there for appearances, her frozen face attempting gracious hostess. Madison had shown up too, probably to document something, though her phone stayed in her purse. "Thank you for coming," Dad said, his voice humbler than I'd ever heard it. "We're at a critical juncture, and your reputation precedes you." Arthur smiled that calm, knowing smile of his. Montgomery is happy to help companies ready for modernization." The presentation was flawless. Arthur walked them through everything our software could do, hitting every pain point they'd listed in their request. Dad nodded along, drinking it in like water in a desert. Mom tried to look like she understood technology. Madison took notes, actual notes, on paper, like some kind of Victorian clerk. Then came the contract review. Arthur went through each clause, explaining terms, answering questions. Dad tried to negotiate a lower price. Arthur smiled and said, "Mr. Mosley, our fees reflect our value. You're welcome to seek other vendors, though I understand your timeline is urgent." The silence that followed was beautiful. Dad signed. Mom witnessed. Madison notarized, because of course she'd brought her stamp, probably hoping to find some legal angle to exploit. Arthur collected our copy, shook hands all around, and promised implementation would begin immediately. As he packed his briefcase, he paused. "One more thing," he said. Montgomery wanted you to have this." He slid a folder across the table, the same cream-colored envelope, the same expensive paper, but this time containing my grandmother's photo and a note in my handwriting. "Some legacies can't be disowned." Dad opened it. His face went through contortions I wish I'd seen in person, confusion, then dawning recognition, then something I can only describe as horror. Mom grabbed it from him. Madison leaned over to look. The 3 of them froze like a Renaissance painting of guilt. Arthur smiled again, the same smile I'd given them at the restaurant, and walked out. My phone buzzed as he left the building. The family group chat, silent for weeks, exploded with messages I didn't read. Madison called 7 times. Mom left voicemails that started with screaming and ended with crying. Dad sent one text, "We need to talk." I saved them all. Evidence. Sarah brought champagne to my office at noon. Arthur joined us, and we toasted to Montgomery Enterprises, to grandmothers who believed in us, to contracts signed and futures built. My phone buzzed continuously on the desk, a soundtrack of desperation I'd waited 27 years to hear. The contract would save Dad's company if they implemented it properly. The irony was that I'd given them exactly what they needed, the modernization they'd refused for decades, packaged in a way they could accept. My unrealistic endeavors were now their only hope. At 3:00 p.m., I sent one text to the family group chat, not to Mom or Dad or Madison individually, but to all of them at once, so they'd see it together. Thank you for the clarity. Montgomery Enterprises appreciates your business. Then I turned off my phone, opened another bottle of champagne, and let the sound of their silence fill the room. I've revised this segment to enhance its narrative flow, emotional impact, and structural clarity while preserving the original's voice and key plot points. The changes focus on tightening the prose, strengthening character moments, and refining the pacing for maximum effect. Dad walked into that conference room like he still owned the world, even though his was crumbling. Through Arthur's hidden tablet camera, I watched him work the room, handshakes, backslaps, the whole performance, talking about synergy and partnership as if he hadn't just disowned his daughter for pursuing the very innovation now sitting across from him. The contract ran 40 pages of exquisitely crafted legal language that essentially said, "You need us more than we need you." The price tag reflected that. Dad didn't flinch. When you're drowning, you don't negotiate with the life preserver. Madison's professional world was imploding in real time. The state bar investigation had officially opened, and her firm had placed her on administrative leave pending review. Her wedding was 2 weeks away, and vendors were mysteriously becoming unavailable as news spread through the social circles Mom had spent decades cultivating. It turned out that publicly disowning your daughter was considered gauche, even among people who treated fish forks as a personality trait. Madison had texted me that morning, "You're ruining my life." I'd responded with a screenshot of her livestream titled, "Family Accountability Moment, 2 million views and counting." The meeting was going perfectly. Arthur presented our software solutions with the quiet passion of a man who'd spent 40 years in tech and finally found something worth his retirement. Dad's board members nodded along, desperate for anything that could stop the hemorrhaging. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Dad asked about the owner. He wanted to meet the genius behind Montgomery Enterprises. Arthur smiled, that particular smile I'd come to recognize, and said the owner preferred to remain private but sent their regards and looked forward to a profitable relationship. Dad actually said this, and I recorded it. I wish my daughter had half this person's business sense, but some people are born for greatness, others just dream about it. The camera caught Arthur's eyebrow, the faintest twitch. He knew. I knew. Dad had no idea. Mom had started showing up at my apartment building, waiting in the lobby until security escorted her out. She'd lost 15 pounds, and her Botox was wearing off, revealing worry lines I'd never seen before. The society pages had stopped featuring her. Her book club had politely suggested she take a sabbatical after the video went viral. She'd gone from queen bee to pariah in 3 weeks, a fall that would have been sad if she hadn't orchestrated mine first. She'd left a note under my door, "Family forgives." I left it in the recycling bin where it belonged. The contract signing was beautiful. Dad's signature on documents that would save his company but cost him everything he'd refused to give me freely: respect, acknowledgement, the simple dignity of being seen. Arthur shook hands, promised implementation within 30 days, and walked out with a check that would fund my company for the next 2 years. Dad called his golf buddies from the conference room, bragging about the deal he'd just made with the most brilliant tech mind he'd ever encountered. If only he knew that brilliant mind had lived in his house for 18 years, begging for a chance to prove herself. That afternoon, another piece fell into place. My grandmother's lawyer called, the one who'd been instructed to wait until a specific condition was met. The condition? Me being formally disowned by my parents. Grandma Eleanor had updated her will 6 months before she died. After overhearing my parents discuss how to keep me dependent, she'd left everything to me, not just money, but the family home my parents lived in, claiming they were caretakers when they actually had no ownership. The house they'd been mortgaging to keep Dad's business afloat. They didn't own it. I did. Or I would. As soon as the lawyer filed the paperwork making the disownment official. The implementation meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Arthur insisted I attend, hidden in plain sight as his assistant taking notes. I wore glasses, pulled my hair back differently, Became invisible in the way service personnel become invisible to people like my parents. Dad walked right past me in the hallway. Didn't even glance at the woman carrying coffee and tablets. 3 years of building a company had taught me that rich people don't see the help. And today, that blindness was my superpower. Madison's wedding implosion had reached critical mass. Her fiancé, a corporate lawyer who valued reputation above all else, had called off the engagement after the Bar Association announced formal ethics charges, recording a family member without consent, broadcasting their humiliation for entertainment, and using law firm resources to create disownment documents. It turned out the legal community frowned on all of that. She'd been fired. Not just suspended, fired. Her license was under review. She'd texted me 300 times, each message more unhinged than the last, blaming me for playing victim when she was the one who'd pressed record. The reveal happened in the most boring, most beautiful way possible. Dad was praising the software to his board, demonstrating how it had already improved efficiency by 30% in trial runs. He mentioned wanting to meet the owner again, to thank them personally for saving his legacy. Arthur, my magnificent, theatrical partner, couldn't resist. She's actually here today, he said casually. She wanted to see the implementation in person. Dad's face lit up like Christmas morning, ready to charm and network and close the deal on whatever relationship he imagined. I stood up from the corner where I'd been typing notes, removed my glasses, and smiled. Hello, Dad. The silence was so complete you could hear the air conditioning humming. Dad's face cycled through the entire spectrum: confusion, recognition, denial, anger, and finally a dawning horror as understanding dawned. His board members looked between us, piecing it together, remembering the viral video several had watched in disgust. One board member, a woman who'd always seemed sharp, actually started laughing. "The daughter you said had no business sense?" she asked. "This is delicious." Mom had been CC'd on the email Arthur sent after the meeting, explaining the ownership structure of E. Montgomery Enterprises and mentioning that the building they were sitting in, my building now, would handle all future meetings. She called 17 times in 5 minutes. I didn't answer, but I did text her a photo of the contract with Dad's signature below a clause stating that any attempt to break the agreement would result in immediate forfeiture of all software rights and triple damages. They couldn't afford to break that clause. They couldn't afford to think about breaking it. The grandmother's will revelation happened that afternoon, delivered by her lawyer to my parents' home, my home, technically, while they were still reeling from the morning's reveal. The doorbell camera I'd had installed, I owned the house, after all, captured Mom's face as she read the eviction notice: 30 days to vacate the house she'd hosted charity galas in, the house she'd bragged about to her society friends, the house she'd thought she owned. It was mine, had been mine the moment they'd signed those disownment papers. Grandma Eleanor had played a long game, and I was the winning move. Madison showed up at my office that evening, mascara streaking her face in very unlawyerly streams. Security called up, but I let her in. Sometimes you need to see the breakdown to believe it's real. She sat across from my desk, my actual executive desk in my actual CEO office, and tried to negotiate. She'd forgive me, she said, if I dropped the bar complaint. I hadn't filed one. Her livestream had done that itself. She'd let me back in the family if I saved Dad's company for free. She'd even apologize publicly if I gave her a job. The delusion was so complete, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. 3 months later, the karma had compounded interest better than any investment portfolio. Dad's company survived. Barely. But the contract terms meant 60% of his profit went to software licensing and maintenance. He was essentially working for me, though he'd never admit it. He tried to break the contract once, shopping for cheaper alternatives. The penalty clause hit so hard his board almost removed him as CEO. He'd aged 10 years in 3 months, the kind of aging that comes from realizing you've bet against the wrong horse, and the race is already over. Madison's fall was complete, disbarred, unemployed, socially radioactive. She'd moved back in with our parents just as they were being evicted from the house. The 3 of them now rented a 2-bedroom apartment in the same complex where I'd lived during college, the one Mom had called depressing when she'd visited once and never returned. Madison worked at a department store now, selling designer handbags she could no longer afford. A customer recognized her last week from the viral video and asked for a selfie with the worst sister on the internet. She'd called me crying. I didn't answer. Mom's society friends had completely abandoned her. Publicly disowning your successful daughter was apparently worse than any scandal they could imagine. The book club formally expelled her after she tried to spin the story as tough love gone wrong. Her charity committees removed her name from letterheads. The country club revoked her membership after the dues check bounced. She'd started a blog about redemption and family healing that had 12 followers, most of them bots. Her Botox had completely worn off, revealing a face that had forgotten how to smile genuinely, if it had ever known how. The business journals picked up our story when the company went public. From Disowned to IPO, the E. Montgomery success story ran in Forbes, featuring a photo of me ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. The article mentioned the family connection briefly, professionally, but the internet connected the dots. Dad's LinkedIn profile disappeared overnight. Madison's Instagram went private after people started commenting contract clauses on her old family photos. Mom tried to claim credit in a Facebook post, saying she'd practiced strategic motivation. The ratios were brutal. I donated the family house to a charity that helps homeless LGBTQ+ youth rejected by their families, making sure the press release mentioned it was my childhood home, recently inherited. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but subtle had never been my family's strong suit anyway. The charity renamed it Eleanor House after my grandmother, and I attended the dedication ceremony. Local news covered it, and there, in the background of one shot, was Mom, watching from across the street. She looked smaller than I remembered, like disowning me had somehow diminished her too. The sweetest revenge came in the smallest moments. Dad at an industry conference, having to watch me give the keynote about innovation and family businesses. Madison at the mall where she worked, watching me shop with Sarah, who loudly asked if I wanted to check out the sales at her store. Mom running into me at the grocery store, and me walking past like she was a stranger, which, legally, she was. They'd wanted me gone, erased, removed from their lives like a typo in their perfect family narrative. They got their wish, just not how they'd imagined it. The wedding invitation surprised me, addressed to E. Montgomery plus guest. I almost threw it away, thinking Madison had lost her mind completely, until I saw the names. It was from James, the pharmaceutical representative Mom had tried to set me up with, marrying someone who wasn't me. The note inside made me laugh. Thanks for dodging that bullet so I could find real love. Your mom still thinks we'd have been perfect together. She RSVP'd, no. Something about a scheduling conflict. We both know why she's really not coming. I sent a nice gift and a note saying I had a business conflict, which was true. I was busy succeeding. Arthur and I were planning our next venture, something bigger, something that would make the first company look like a practice run. He'd become the grandfather I'd never had, protective and proud in ways my actual family never was. At the IPO party, he'd given a toast that made me cry about believing in yourself when no one else does, about choosing your family, about the sweetest success being the kind nobody can take away from you. That toast went viral too, but this time for the right reasons. Sarah helped me move into my new place, a penthouse with a view of the city and, ironically, a clear sightline to Dad's old office building, the one he'd have to sell soon to cover losses. We drank champagne on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky gold, and she asked if I ever regretted how it went down. I thought about it, really considered whether I'd change anything if I could go back to that graduation dinner. The answer was no. They'd given me the greatest gift possible, freedom from seeking their approval. The disownment letter, framed in my office now, was my diploma from the University of Hard Truths. Dad sent a letter last week through his lawyer, not admitting wrong, but suggesting a business reconciliation, for the good of both enterprises. I had my lawyer respond that E. Montgomery Enterprises didn't engage in partnerships with companies that had shown bad faith in previous dealings. The legal language for, "you made your bed," was beautifully cold. He'd have to watch his daughter's company grow while his shrank, a gap that would only widen with time. Every success I had would be a reminder of the opportunity he'd thrown away with both hands and a notarized letter. Madison had started therapy, according to a mutual friend who felt sorry for her. Good for her. Honestly, maybe she'd figure out why she'd needed to destroy me to feel big. Maybe she'd understand that being the favorite child meant nothing when the parents weren't worth impressing. Or maybe she'd just learn to live with being the sister who went viral for all the wrong reasons. Either way, it wasn't my problem. I'd been disowned. Remember? Her healing journey was as disconnected from me as everything else in that family. Mom posted old family photos on Facebook sometimes, the ones from before everything fell apart, with captions about cherishing memories and family is forever. The comments were always the same, people asking where I was, why recent photos never included me, if everything was okay. She'd delete the posts within hours, but the internet had already screenshotted them. Someone had started a Reddit thread called Narcissist Parent Bingo, using her posts as examples. I didn't participate, but I did read it sometimes when I needed to remember that their behavior wasn't normal, wasn't love, wasn't my fault. 3 years after that graduation dinner, I stood in my office looking at the wall of achievements, magazine covers, award certificates, photos with business leaders who actually respected me. None of it would have happened if my family had gotten their way. I would have been a secretary in a failing company, married to someone Mom chose, living a life designed by committee. Instead, I was exactly who I'd fought to become, successful, not despite my family's rejection, but because of it. The disownment letter had been meant to break me. Instead, it had been the key to a cage I hadn't even realized I was in. The ending came not with confrontation, but with indifference. I saw Dad at a coffee shop, looking tired and 10 years older, scrolling through his phone at a corner table. He saw me, started to stand, maybe to speak, or apologize, or negotiate. I walked past him to the counter, ordered my coffee, and left. No drama, no scene, no acknowledgement. He was a stranger who happened to share some DNA, nothing more. The barista called out my order, coffee for Montgomery. I smiled, taking my cup with my chosen name on it, walking into a future that was entirely mine. They'd disowned me, but I'd claimed myself. Revision notes. Strengthened narrative voice. Sharpened internal monologue for consistency and emotional resonance. Enhanced pacing. Broke up longer paragraphs. Varied sentence structure to control rhythm. Deepened character moments. Added subtle beats, Arthur's eyebrow twitch. The doorbell camera footage, for texture. Refined dialogue and details. Tightened exchanges and imagery for maximum impact. Clarified timeline and consequences. Ensured logical progression of events and emotional stakes. Preserved tone and key plot points. Maintained the original's blend of wit, hurt, and triumph. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or a specific section expanded.